numbers are in and tell a surprising story about the state of agriculture in Nebraska.
90% of the land in Nebraska is farmable.
Straight ahead, we break down data from the newly released Census of Agriculture. Plus, we look at efforts in the legislature to address high nitrate levels.
Create kind of a buzz around soil health.
Later, we preview the classic as cattlemen gather in Kearney.
Cattle show and sales.
And our Farm Youth of the Month on the farm and the vineyard. It's time to grow. Nebraska is an agricultural powerhouse, and the numbers back it up.
I learned to...
While the crew restores a tractor his grandpa would have used,
every time we...
Mark McHarg and his son check out the combine that allows them to harvest thousands of acres. At age 57, the Farm Bureau president, at least statistically, is average, according to the newly released Census of Agriculture.
I'm not sure how I exactly feel about that, but when you put that all together, I'm just average, I guess. But my son, Andrew, that's farming now, he just turned 35, so he fits into that, you know, kind of that young farmer just tipping into that middle-aged side. But boy, for that generation that's just coming up, the things that are available for him, the tools, is pretty incredible.
The typical farmer got slightly older, but not much. And at least in Nebraska, there's a rise in producers under 35. Nationally, the number of farms declined 7%. Nebraska fared better.
We haven't seen significant reduction in farmers in our state, really compared to maybe some of the other states around.
And unlike the rest of the country, the vast majority of land in Nebraska is used for agriculture.
90% of the land in Nebraska is farmable, either ranch land or crop land. So that's really significant. That's the reason that Nebraska is and always will be a powerhouse.
Nebraska shows a nearly 50-50 split between livestock and crop production, and both sides have shown big growth.
We're up almost 34% on ag receipts in Nebraska. I think that's really significant. We're almost at $30 billion a year that we, in just ag production coming out of the state of Nebraska.
Farm income is up, but so are expenses. Still, McHarg thinks Nebraska has plenty of room to grow, especially through livestock.
And I think we can do it, and I think we got the tools in the toolbox to get that done, especially with the new generation coming up. Biologicals are the buzz in agriculture. Now the legislature considers incentives for farmers who use them. Many areas of Nebraska deal with high nitrate levels in groundwater resulting from commercial fertilizer use. There's a growing interest in biological products, things like beneficial bacteria to improve nitrogen management. Senator Teresa Ibaugh says her family has had success on their family farm near Sumner.
We're hoping that maybe we can find some teeth in that bill and do some funding to help incent some farmers to create their own biologics program and create kind of a buzz around soil health, plant health, and groundwater health as well.
Ibaugh's bill would create a $5 million program for the next 5 years to encourage use of these products. She said it's one step to address the legacy of high nitrates.
It took several years for our groundwater, to be what it is now, and we're hoping that by being stewards of the land and stewards of our water, we can preserve it for generations.
During a committee hearing this week, the bill had the support of farm and environmental groups. However, a regenerative agriculture expert had mixed feedback, saying a broader bill could have more impact by encouraging things like cover crops. Also, there's mixed data about the long-term effectiveness of these biological products. The committee took no immediate action. In fact, a dozen land-grant universities studied biological products, and this is their summary. Quote, given the low rate of positive benefits to the use of these products, growers should be skeptical, end quote. They say farmers are right to be curious, but wise growers need to test products on their own farm and search for unbiased data. The state's high pediatric cancer rates, the focus of a bill up for a hearing this past week. The measure from Omaha Senator Michaela Cavanaugh is concerned with high nitrates in groundwater near cattle feedlots and hog barns. Cavanaugh points to research by the University of Nebraska Medical Center showing cancer rates in Nebraska kids are among the 5 highest in the country, adding that pediatric cancer rates have been linked to nitrate-contaminated groundwater. She says her bill would add more monitoring of wells. Existing feedlot operations within groundwater management areas would be required to install monitoring wells if they don't already have them in place. The government easing red tape for farmers who want to use drones. The unmanned devices can be used to gather data on crops by analyzing plant health from the sky. They can also deliver pesticides and chemical treatments with precision. With any new technology, there are hoops to jump through, but the FAA just granted authorization for a U.S. company to operate any drone for agricultural operations, which removes a big hurdle for farmers.
When we talk to the growers and farmers, and they're really excited about the technology, and then they say, well, what kind of licenses do I need? What kind of, what do I need to actually fly this? A lot of their eyes glaze over because it's like, oh my God, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to handle all that with everything else that's going on.
Drones can be more cost-effective and help farmers when it comes to scheduling. The agricultural drone market is predicted to grow by more than $10 billion in the next 5 years. Well, Jenny, the university does a lot of work with farmers. They cooperate with you on farm research projects, and if people want to kind of see the results for themselves, they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. We have our on-farm research update starting in the state. I believe it's February 20th is when they start it at NREC near Meade. But if they go to our Crop Watch website and the on-farm research page, they can find out more.
Trying on a Dust Bowl era program, the USDA launches an effort to train the next generation of conservation leaders. Whether it's your local natural resources district or nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy, there are efforts underway to bring sustainable practices to the farm. And now the USDA creates the Working Lands Climate Corps to train young people who can support efforts like these.
To be able to build out that capacity, we need to train up the next generation. We need to tap into kind of the excitement that is there from young people for climate, for conservation. And this is a way that we're able to allow them to have those experiences working with organizations in local communities while simultaneously getting the trainings that are going to set them on a path to be able to become those leaders who are providing the technical assistance, who are working with farmers and ranchers, who are really kind of really instrumental to climate smart agriculture and successful implementation.
How can young people get involved?
Conservation districts, organizations in local communities, general farm organizations to apply to say, I want to host a Working Lands Climate Corps member. That request for proposals will be open through March 8th. So again, a quick turnaround because we want to make sure we can kind of line up with this larger timeline. Then from there, those applications will be reviewed, and then we'll say, this is the set of organizations that are hosting Working Lands Climate Corps members, and then it's actually those specific organizations that young people will be applying to.
There really is so much innovation happening, so many different things going on, to try to improve sustainability and do some climate smart practices. I mean, I hear about things just about daily, but disseminating that so that the actual farmer and rancher gets that. Do you see this as part of that mission?
One of the most exciting things that these young people will be able to do in these positions is do the outreach, do the education, do the engagement, making sure that kind of farmers and ranchers across the country know what's out there, whether it's from USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, whether it's from other partners. That might look like hosting field days, that might look like putting together educational materials.
Just anecdotally, I talked with the head of the National Drought Center, which is based here in Nebraska last year, but he said, thank goodness that back in the 1930s, we created, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, that helps farmers then plant shelter belts when we have trees. And can you imagine where we had been if we had not done that? But I mean, do you see this almost kind of being a parallel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously the Civilian Conservation Corps is kind of what we are looking to as we build out the American Climate Corps, as we build out the Working Lands Climate Corps, with a new and different spin on it. But yes, very much so. And I think it's important to point out that when we talk about climate and when we talk about working lands, we are talking both about mitigation. So how can we sequester carbon? How can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? But also how can we ensure that these farmers and ranchers have the tools they need to be more resilient in the face of climate change? So
stay with us as we meet a teen who's growing success on a unique farm. Up next, we see what's on tap for cattlemen attending the Classic in Kearney. Cattlemen gather at the Classic. Our newest reporter, Alexis Sander, herself a veteran of attending the Classic, has more from NCC.
I'm here today with Renette. Renette, would you mind explaining what you do here for the NCC Cattlemen's Classic?
Absolutely. I am the manager of the NCC, the Classic, and what an exciting week we've got coming here, February 17th through the 25th. And as you can tell, we're getting set up here at the Buffalo County Fairgrounds. And, you know, the Classic has grown into much more than just our traditional event in the wintertime. And
you mentioned all the kids that are coming in. Is that for show or is that for classes? What are they kind of doing while they're here?
The Classic Livestock Judging Contest is a contest that essentially teaches kids how to analyze livestock, place them, and then have the ability to stand in front of a judge and justify their placing. So really we're helping teach a lot of leadership skills with our first contest that gets underway with our Livestock Judging Contest. And then we roll into the events for cattlemen. You know, the Classic started back in 1991 with just cattle show and sales, and that is the basis of the Classic. So very excited. On Wednesday we start our cattle shows with all of the livestock breeds, as well as our pen bowl sale, our commercial heifer pen sale. We've got a big sale day on Thursday, and as you can tell, we've got a great commercial trade show that's going to be here at the Classic.
And would you encourage a lot of people in the community to attend this event?
Kearney area and anyone in the area or at central states ought to make their way to the Buffalo County Fairgrounds. It is free admission, it's free parking, a lot of things to see here. Again, we've got a great commercial trade show, the cattle show and sales. Just come and enjoy. The weather sounds great, so it's going to be a great time to come to the fairgrounds.
What are you looking forward to the most during the Classic?
It is very exciting, you know, excited to see people that we haven't seen maybe since last year that kind of make it a tradition to come to the Classic. You know, we'll start at the beginning with some tremendous youth events, and we'll wrap up the Classic with our junior show. And very excited to work with the next generation and provide those opportunities. We've got a tremendous scholarship program, and again, investing in cattlemen of all ages.
And what's the scholarship kind of looking like? Where can the kids go and apply for that at?
The scholarship program is based on kids that buy a steer or heifer at the Classic sales, and essentially it's a year-long project. They are a part of an educational tour this summer. They get to complete a simple record book. They have the opportunity to network with allied industry leaders, be a part of a simple interview, and there's over $24,000 invested back to boys and girls.
Our Grow Weather Outlook is next.
Well, the drought monitor that was released this past Thursday morning still got some pretty dry conditions across much of Nebraska and much of Kansas, although there were some noticeable improvements, especially across the state of Kansas, where the no drought category now stands about 49.33%, and abnormally dry on the other end of that, 50 2/3%. Both of those categories a 13.5% improvement from last week, so good to see some major improvements there in Kansas. Moderate drought now stands at about 28.25%. Roughly a 4.25% improvement from last week, too. Severe drought now at about 2.32% of the state there. Nice little improvement from last week as well. No more extreme or exceptional drought across the entire state of Kansas. So good to see some improvements there. Moving off to the north now. Some slight improvements in Nebraska as well. No drought now stands at about 65 2/3% of the state, which means abnormally dry, about 34 1/3% of the state in that category. About a 1.5% improvement in both of those. Otherwise, moderate drought now about 24.5%, just a slight improvement from last week, too. And severe drought still stands at about 12% compared to last week. It was about the same. So definitely could still use some rain in parts of eastern and southeast Nebraska. The March temperature outlook that was released this past week by the Climate Predictions Center, indicating relatively average temperatures for all of Kansas as well as all of Nebraska. Those warmer temperatures favoring our northern areas, those cooler temperatures favoring our southern areas in the contiguous U.S. For the next month of March, precipitation-wise, expecting some average totals there for parts of central and eastern Kansas, as well as parts of southeast Nebraska. Otherwise, the rest of Kansas and the rest of Nebraska expecting above average precipitation totals for the month of March. And the next 3 months, looking at March, April, and May here, looking at relatively average temperatures again for all of Kansas as well as all of Nebraska. And moving along with the precipitation totals for the next 3 months as well. Slightly above average precipitation totals expected for parts of eastern and central Kansas as well as central and eastern Nebraska. Otherwise, average totals are expected here the next 3 months. Your Grow Almanac here for the week ahead. Normally we see a high around 42 this time of year. Normal low sits at about 21, so we're starting to warm those temperatures up a little bit. The week ahead definitely blows that out of the water. 56, the average high this next week. 32, the week ahead average low. And here is your Grow week ahead. Starting off, those temperatures likely in the 40s and 50s for President's Day on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, by far the nicest days of the next week. Hope you can get outside and enjoy those days. Temperatures in the 60s both days. We are going to start cooling off, although again towards the end of the week, maybe a chance of precipitation mixed in both Thursday and Friday, but nothing real significant to latch onto right now. But mild this next week. That's going to be the theme of our Grow proverb here. Of all the months of the year, to curse a fair February. Well, I wonder what that means for spring. Well, that is a check of your Grow weather report. Stay tuned when next week it will once again be time to grow.
We sure have enjoyed seeing your 4-H photos. Long, we're celebrating 4-H in Nebraska. And now it's time for FFA Week. We want to see your photos as well. Go to nebraska.tv/chime in and add your photos to the Agriculture tab. More than corn and cows, we'll meet a team producing a product that pairs well with Nebraska beef.
Ag Youth of the Month is sponsored by Landmark Implement. Experience the Landmark difference with locations across Nebraska and northern Kansas.
Nebraska's much more than corn and cattle, and one local team helping produce a product that pairs nicely with Nebraska beef. A symphony of sounds as a Central City family bottles the farm-to-table experience.
We grow grapes, process the grapes, bottle the grapes, and then we have a restaurant in Central City, in town on Highway 30, Prairie Creek Winery.
Charlie Ryan may not raise cattle or crops, but she's learning agriculture through the family vineyard and winery. She started with hand harvesting before they got specialized machinery, and still does labor-intensive jobs like pruning the unwanted shoots from the vines.
They're just really annoying. And so we'll just take a pruner and we'll snip them off and just throw them, just because there's extra leaves, extra energy is just going down there. And so if we can send it up top, we want to send it up top.
Her hands-on experience has brought recognition at the state FFA convention.
I've qualified for state 3 times. My fruit production has gone to state all 3 years. It just qualified last week for state again.
While they produce white and red wine, she's going for gold, with hopes of taking first in her competition. But already she's a winner in her dad Nick's eyes.
16 years ago, she's been out with us the entire time. So it's fun to see the kids grow up and learn everything from planting grapes to, the finished product. He grew up on a row crop operation before starting Prairie Creek Winery. It may be non-traditional agriculture for central Nebraska, but Charlie gets a well-rounded view. Seeing the ag part of it, the growing, the manufacturing part of it, all the way to the retail part, which not a lot of businesses go from the very beginning to the very end. She plans to study agricultural economics and entrepreneurship in college.
Minor in the Engler program, so that's the entrepreneurship program at UNL. So I'm super excited for that.
Grafting her experiences from the farm to the real world, the Central City FFA president may harvest success in the future.
We're hoping for a first place. We've held it back so that we can kind of grow it a little bit and then send it to nationals with a couple more years of experience. We are the second largest vineyard and winery in Nebraska now, so that's really cool.
For her involvement in the classroom and on the farm, we're proud to honor Charlie as our outstanding Farm Youth of the Month. And for more great farm youth, we're going to be celebrating them all week long during this FFA week. And we'll see you back here next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.
NTV's Grow is brought to you by Aurora Cooperative. Tougher together, Aurora and you.